you ready, eager young space cadet?
Meep, meep. I saw a Porky Pig.
That is the limit!
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
Hello, and welcome to Of Course You Realize This Means Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Graves, and with me today is a fellow podcaster and fan of all Warner Brothers, Chris Booka Taylor. Chris, how are you?
I'm great. I'm doing awesome over here. It's been great. We've had a lot of really great things coming down the pipeline for Warner, and it's been really awesome, I feel like, last couple weeks.
Yeah, they just keep releasing new stuff, new news, new shorts, new stuff to talk about, and they're keeping us sane during this crazy time.
Yes.
So you're over there at AT and WB Podcast. Do you want to let our listeners know where to find that and what the show's about?
Yeah, sure. You can find me. I have you can only find my podcast on CDs. I put them in random Best Buys throughout the country. No, I'm just joking. You can't even go into a Best Buy right now, I don't think.
No, you can't.
But
it's really frustrating.
Yeah, you can find it on fulldino.com or fulldinosaur.com. I always find it ironic, like you don't have to write out the full word dinosaur. You can just do full dino. Or you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, I believe. Although someone asked me the other day, they're like, oh, I can obviously listen to it on Spotify, right? And I was like, oh, no, I don't think you can actually. I think I have to manually put it on Spotify. So it's not on there. But it's on, what are the podcasts? Like Stitcher, it's there. Apple Podcasts.
Stitcher, iTunes.
Yeah. iTunes. Okay. I'm sure.
And maybe one day Spotify.
Yes, maybe one day Spotify. Napster. Yeah.
LimeWire.
Yes. There was one I used to use called SoulSeek, which you were able to like go into people's folders and actually like pull out music. And sometimes they would have it just linked to their C drive. So you'd be able to go through all of their stuff. It was very creepy, actually, in retrospect.
That sounds legit.
Yeah, but I found every album, every hard to find album that you'd never be able to find nowadays. I was able to find back then. It was great.
Oh, the ways of the West of classic internet.
Yeah, and it's all gone now. It's all just, that hard drive crashed. It's all disappeared.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. Hopefully, listeners can find you and listen to that show. I know you have some pretty cool content coming up.
Yeah,
and I think they'll appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I could be a little more specific about it too. I've been a Warner fan ever since the first movie I saw in theaters, which I guess I was.
What was that?
3 years old. It was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and there's just that moment when Bugs and Mickey fall through the sky together. And I didn't know this at the time, but I've since found out that, they share equal screen time in that movie. Legally, Bugs and Mickey have to share equal screen time, which I find fascinating nowadays. And so ever since then, I've thought of Warner and Disney as these parallel synergistic entities. And to the degree where even in the 90s, I felt like we had that second generation of Looney Tunes, with Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Freakazoid, even Hysteria. And we had Batman and Superman crossing over well before the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we had all those, we had Six Flags with the Looney Tunes. I feel like Warner Brothers was Disney before Disney was Disney, if that makes any sense. So that's what I try to pull out in my podcast. And
well, during that time, Disney was in the Renaissance era, so they were producing Aladdin and Lion King.
That's very true. Even up to
amazing
Mulan.
Products.
Yeah, they had some really beautiful films at that time, and they tried with Mickey's Kitchen, I believe. They had their own restaurant for a little bit. But we had the Warner Brothers Studio store, kind of competing with the Disney store at the time, and
right.
Yeah, and the Harry Potter movies and the Lord of the Rings films were kind of okay, this is how you make a Marvel movie, and this is how you make what are the, like, even like the Matrix, like this is how you make these big blockbusters. I kind of feel like Warner Brothers in a way figured it out a little before Disney did. Again, the Disney animation stuff is true, but they are also making like uh Jungle to Jungle. I'm trying to think like those Tim Allen Disney movies back then. Disney's The Kid, which
Right,
I think
Flubber and all
yeah,
those.
yeah, and I love those movies. I love Jungle to Jungle. I haven't seen it in forever, and I feel like the little kid in it reminds me of the girl who plays is it 11? Yeah, from Stranger Things. Like,
Oh yeah,
they look
I can see
very
that.
similar. Anyway, that's not what this podcast
Millie Bobby
is about.
Brown.
That's it. She looks just like, and
Yeah.
we'll never remember the kid's name from Jungle to Jungle, who's like probably at like 37 now.
But yeah, no, they had a similar trajectory, and ironically, one of the executives and who was the chief at Warner Brothers during the time of The Matrix and greenlit a bunch of those movies you mentioned, he is currently over at Disney now. So that's Alan Horn, and he's one of my inspirations. And he,
Exactly, yeah.
was the guy behind the curtain, if you will. And now he's handling everything over at Disney with Marvel and all the live action stuff over there. So
Yeah, overall, I think
really fun trajectory for him.
yeah,
and,
and he's doing a bang up job, I think, at Disney. With it's a delicate balance, all those properties, and I think they're doing a pretty good job at it.
Yeah, Kevin Feige and the team over there for sure.
Yeah,
But we're here to talk Warner Brothers.
that's it.
And we got to transition into some of those titles. One of those being the newly announced Justice League, the Snyder Cut,
Yeah.
which friend of the show and who's been on the show, Mark Hughes, has been talking about for a really long time, that actually exists, and he's been advocating for it. But there's been a lot of fan reverence for seeing this product. So what do you think about it finally coming to HBO Max?
I think this is a great move for HBO Max. I think that, obviously currently right now there's the global pandemic. If you're listening to this far in the future, there's a pandemic happening right now. And so I feel like HBO isn't able to, shoot anything new. So, I think this is great news for fans of Snyder's work. Personally, I really enjoyed his Watchmen and 300. And even like, there's some really beautiful elements to Man of Steel as well. I like especially like the whole father thing in that film. I think it's like amazing. And very important too, like his character arc. And I just think that stuff works so well in that movie. I just wonder if COVID-19 wasn't happening, if we'd still be getting the Snyder Cut for HBO Max. Because, like, they're going to shoot the Friends 1 hour reunion special, but, they can't now.
Right.
Warner is bringing Swamp Thing to the CW because they can't film any new, like, Riverdale or Flash or... Batwoman, there's news about that too, where Ruby Rose just left Batwoman, so that they should be fine. They'll cast someone else. But it just seems that everyone's pulling for content. I think this is a perfect place to pull. It seems like too that he went to them and he was like, "Look, I have this. I just need a little bit more to finish this, and then we're good to go." So I think that's why the date's so far out too. I think it's May 2021.
That's correct. It's next year, but I do remember in July or August of 2019, long before the pandemic started, there was this push by the cast on Twitter that put out hashtag release the Snyder Cut. And that kind of brought back the fever for it online. And I think that there were dealings and ideas that were being pushed around and played with around that time. So it could have been something that's been long in the works, and now they just finally have a release date for it, and they know where they're going to put it.
Yeah, which is great.
But you could be right. There could be a lack of production going on now, so they had to speed up what was already almost done or in the can, if you will. So we'll see how that all comes out. I'm worried a little bit that the vocal minority that started this whole push they might not get what they're expecting, if you will, out of it, just because they have built up this idea of what it possibly could be, and whatever comes out, it may not match that.
Well, yeah.
At least he's finishing his vision.
Yeah, I think the expectation should be in that, like, you'll get the full finished cut of this movie. It seems like when directors make a movie, they put together their own assembly cut, and he had that initially, I would think. And then, it seemed, we know what happened. The studio came in, and then it completely became a different film. But then, so, like, I feel like he's always had this assembly cut, like, at his house, like, ready to go. That's why we saw it one day. He took the picture of, like, the film.
Right.
And so, yeah. So then I think he just needs, like, 20 million to finish it now. But I think, like, our expectations should be in, like, we're going to get that. I don't expect, like, a Justice League 2 or a Justice League 3 or, like, the Cyborg movie or anything like that. I think our expectations shouldn't go past the Snyder Cut.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see it. I'm interested to see how it turns out, and hopefully this satisfies people that are wanting more out of this team, and we get some really fun, creative choices out of it.
Yeah, and generationally, it's really interesting to look at, because the original, was it Superman or Superman 2? There was the Richard Donner cut finally, like 30 years later.
Superman 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, Superman 2.
So it's interesting how, like, in one generation, they weren't getting their cut, like the director's cut of a Superman movie, and that happened all over again.
Yeah, that is interesting. Let's transition into some Looney Tune discussion.
Yes.
We had a new short drop called Tunnel Vision, starring Wiley Coyote and the Roadrunner this week, and that was delightful. Did you catch that one?
Yes, that was really, really great. I think you summed it up best with what you said about it in, like, one sentence to me earlier. That inverted, and I've never heard anyone say this before either, which I find really interesting, but it was, that inverted my expectations and I loved it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which is awesome, because you never hear that. I mean, maybe, like, The Sixth Sense, people were like, wow, that inverted my expectations and I loved it. But, like, since then, like, anytime a movie inverted expectations, normally some people are just like, what? No way. I don't like my expectations inverted. But this was really cool how they did this. I thought it was really awesome.
Right. That was the biggest complaint coming out of Last Jedi. People that didn't like that movie was it subverted all the expectations too much or something like that.
Yeah.
But
and
this took a concept with Wiley drawing the road continuing on a rock or on a boulder. And his plan is for the Roadrunner to run into that rock, and then he can, have his lunch. And when the Roadrunner goes through it, and so does he, it's turning that concept of, oh, he's going to run into the boulder himself,
obviously,
on its head, or on its ear rather. And you actually get to see those cartoon dynamics changed up a bit. And it felt in universe. It didn't feel out of left field. And then you have another subversion where he's stuck in it. He can't get out. And I think that was really fun too. And then you have the Roadrunner come up with a hose full of water, and he just washes the painting away and the coyote with it.
It was hilarious. It was really great. And I think the animation style too, specifically how Wile E Coyote is drawn and how the Roadrunner is drawn. I mean, two completely different things. The Roadrunner kind of has his eyeballs, like, one is going one way, one's going the other. Very silly kind of look. While Wile E Coyote looks like, there's those 3 Nicktoons shows. I get getting away from Warner Brothers for a second, but, like, it was Ren and Stimpy, then Ruocco, then SpongeBob, and they all did this, where they do this super close-up of a character every once in a while, and then you see, like, the super detailed animation or drawing of this character. They don't actually move that much in it. It's just kind of this super detailed drawing.
Right.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what Wile E Coyote looked like to me. He just looks super detailed and a little, like, a little grotesque, and I loved it.
Yeah, I love the little fangs that are coming out the sides of his mouth.
Yeah.
And he just looks vicious.
Yeah.
And that's perfect for that character. I really love the new design on him. And the Roadrunner's color is so vibrant, and he's so unique to the Roadrunner. You recognize it as the Roadrunner, but it's new. It's a new rendition of that. And I think they knocked this one out of the park for sure.
Yeah, it felt so fresh, and it's really great. It's really wonderful.
Another one that they knocked out of the park that we haven't covered yet is Wet Cement. This is with Daffy and Porky, and it's basically Porky is trying to construct a slab of concrete, and Daffy wants to make an imprint of his foot. What did you think about this one?
I thought this one was amazing. I remember now they revealed the Dynamite dance originally at the Annecy Film Festival, and I believe this one was screened there as well. So
that's correct.
Yeah, we saw like little screenshots like that people just took with their cell phones, I think, like back in 2019, and it was amazing to finally actually see the short. So it was a little spoiled for me. Like I knew the Tex Avery thing already. Yeah. But it was great to see. It was just so silly, very minimalist in its talking, and just very silly and fun, and just again very well drawn and animated, I thought.
I think that Tex Avery homage is one of my favorite that we've gotten out of these cartoons so far, and I hope for more of those.
Yeah.
Just because that was such a shock to see that type of reverence put into these. I was not expecting it.
It's like it's reverence, but then it's also respect. Like I think it's like a really great balance of the two. As you know, it's like he comes up out of the cement and he's holding Tex Avery's hand. It's an homage to like the Disneyland statue of Mickey holding Walt's hand.
Yes, that iconic partner statue at the end of Main Street.
Yeah,
for sure.
Which reminds me of my favorite. Disneyland joke, which is when you walk behind him, and then someone goes, "Look, it's the back of Walter." Like a water joke from the Jungle Cruise.
I have never heard of that.
Really?
That's
it's really funny. It's really great.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I also want to point out Eric Bauza doing Daffy here. It's Wacky Daffy, which we're going to get a lot of with this series. And Bob Bergen doing Porky. Both of them are just firing on all cylinders, and you actually get to hear Eric's Daffy for the first time in the public, because I've seen Curse of the Monkey Bird, but no one else has.
Ooh.
And it's really hard to sell people on something you haven't heard yet, but this is everyone's first, I guess, earful of Daffy. And he says, I'm one stuck duck, but it's the way he says it and like the inflection, and he nailed it. What did you think of the voices?
I thought they were great. I think they're doing an excellent job. Yeah, I have zero complaints. I feel like they sound exactly how I would want them to. Honestly, like if I can go back and look at all of the voices that have ever voiced these characters, the only one I've ever had a real complaint with is like Pepe Le Pew in Space Jam. Like he doesn't sound anything like himself there. I think Eric Bauza, because he's playing a ton of these characters too, right? Like he's Bugs,
That's
he's
correct.
Daffy,
he's Bugs, he's Daffy, he's Tweety.
That's incredible. Like what an incredible voice actor! It's just insane.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear his Tweety. So yeah, that's available on YouTube now. You can search Looney Tunes and find them on the WB Kids channel. You could find them on HBO Max's news channel. They are kind of just shotgunned everywhere. That Warner Brother content currently lives on YouTube. And soon they'll all be in one place, which is HBO Max, coming out May 27th. So moving on to something else that was released recently, and our main review of the show.
Oh, it's about to start. You ready?
Ready.
Popcorn?
Butter.
Nachos?
Cheese.
Root beer with red licorice straw?
Right here. Maybe it's time we made our new movie.
The 2020 rendition of what it's like to make a Scooby-Doo movie in the modern era with modern jokes and trying to build something more. Scoob. starring Zac Efron as Fred Jones, Will Forte as Shaggy, Gina Rodriguez as Velma, Mark Wahlberg as the Blue Falcon, and Amanda Seyfried as Daphne, and Frank Welker as Scooby-Doo himself.
Not bad.
Now available on VOD, and I'm not sure if it's going to get a theatrical release later on. I don't think it is.
Yeah, and
but
I think there's the drive-in theaters. I don't think any of them are playing this movie either, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I didn't see that listed either. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think it's going to be in theaters. I think it's just going to be released through the Vudu at Home, or the home experience, and then maybe on HBO Max later on. But it's definitely not with the launch.
And it's very disappointing because this movie obviously is supposed to be like the start of a cinematic universe, and we're not starting it in the cinemas. It's just disappointing,
Exactly. I went in with an open mind. I guess I want to start. What did you know about this movie before you watched it?
I knew that. The first thing was that they basically got a whole new voice cast to play these characters. They just wanted to start fresh, except for Scooby-Doo, and they got back Frank Welker, who
does an amazing job as Scoob.
Yeah, and he's the original Fred.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. In the original 1969 series. So it's great that they have that to pull from all the way back there. It kind of grounds this new thing into everything else. And then obviously, they didn't cast Matthew Lillard as well, and he's been playing Shaggy since 2000. Was it 2002? Is that when that movie came out? The live action Scooby-Doo movies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so since then, he's been playing the voice. So it's kind of disappointing that they didn't use him. I can only hope that they bring him back one day to play Shaggy again in another cartoon series or something like that. One can only hope. I really hope that it's just Will Forte for this cinematic universe they're building, and maybe they'll bring Lillard back into the fold some other way. But maybe that's wishful thinking as well. And then I knew that they were wanting to build a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe out of this movie. That's the two things that I knew.
Interesting. So I also knew that latter part, the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, because they had all of these properties that they didn't know what to do with. There was a failed Hong Kong Phooey movie that didn't get off the ground, and they were just kind of stumbling along. And I think at some point they had an idea to write in an Iron Man-esque start of a universe, but I feel like it came out more like The Mummy, the 2018 Mummy or 2017 Mummy, the one with Tom Cruise that did not do well, but they put the cart in front of the horse, and they tried to...
Alex Kurtzman directed The Mummy.
Yes, they tried to do too much with it. However, I went in with an open mind, only knowing that in 2015, when the initial movie was announced, it was announced as an analog of S.C.O.O.B, and it was supposed to be a robot Scooby. And I think, I think that they took the remains of that idea and they melded it into this movie, because we have a robot dog in it, but it's not Scoob. Scoob is actually a Great Dane, and he's a living dog. And so the whole element of having Scoob meet other Hanna-Barbera characters, I think, started from that, and that would have been an interesting idea. I feel like the movie we got is a mess, but there are little elements of it that I actually like, and I want to start with those. So I'll just start first. The montage that we get from them being young and going to adulthood, I feel like is incredible. And they pay such respect to the original series, and I really, really enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, that was really great. I mean, homage they're young, and then there's the homage, and they get older through they get older through the montage. And it's an homage. That's very hard. Those birds are very much more similar than I thought. And it's an homage to the opening credits of Scooby-Doo. So they're running back and forth through different doors, and like it's very.
And
silly.
the monster designs are even taken from that intro from the '60s, the classic '60s.
Oh, that's really cool.
Cartoon. Yeah, I really like that. But you had a mention of when they first meet, which I also really like, which is during Halloween, which is very appropriate, and they're kids and they're dressed in costumes. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Daphne is dressed as Wonder Woman, which is great, and an interesting thing is too, like, they're kids, I feel like, in 2020. So when they're adults,
Yes.
I feel like it's like 2035, right? Or 2040? It's interesting. Or it's still 2020. I'm not sure. But Daphne's dressed as Wonder Woman. Great Warner synergy there. And then Shaggy thinks Velma is dressed as Harry Potter. Again, the Harry Potter movie universe is all Warner Brothers. But she's actually Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And he asks what house she's in, and it says is a Hufflepuff. And then Velma mentions that she's on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's actually on the Supreme Court. And then he's grossed out and says, ew, she's definitely a Slytherin then, which is pretty silly.
Yes. It's very silly. And of course, Shaggy would be the one that would be into those specific franchises and everything within the Warner library.
Yeah.
But I do love that synergy. And it's funny that you bring up the time period, because when we first meet Shaggy, he's standing in front of another really great reference in Casey's Creations, which is giving a shout out to Casey Kasem, the original voice of Shaggy.
That's right.
And it's a psychedelic tie-dye look behind him on the billboard, but he hits his iPod or some kind of audio player, and it just says 60s, or it says 90s, and he's listening to these different eras of lonely songs. But it was funny because at that point I was like, what era are we in? When in the timeline are we?
Yeah, it was show me the meaning of being lonely. Yeah, I was really confused at first.
Yeah, so when that song plays by the Backstreet Boys, I thought we were going to be in the 90s as kids and then grow up and be in the correct timeline for adulthood. But then they kind of flip that and they just go through all the eras.
Also, the fact that like it's Venice, California, which is like when I think of Venice, California, I think of the 1990s. I feel like that's like the heyday of Venice, California, and that's where this opening is. So I really thought it was the 90s when "Show Me the Meaning of Being Lonely" was being played.
Exactly. And so yeah, I was really surprised that it was modern day, but it was a really fun intro. I really liked how they got introduced together, and then they go on that first initial mystery as kids of that haunted house. That entire sequence is really well done.
Yeah.
And I think within that first 15 minutes of the movie, that's the quintessential like Scooby-Doo movie. And then it transitions into something else entirely.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed this movie more if they stayed kids throughout the entire movie, and it was really like their first adventures together. Like,
oh, that would have been interesting.
yeah, it seems like the first act. It seems like it is when they're kids, and then we get the montage, the homage montage, and hashtag homage montage, and then
homage montage.
yeah, imagine if anyway, and then we get like this we get this new movie. You're right, like after that, it's just it's like it's not jarring. It's just like I kind of like them as kids, and I would have liked to explore that a little further, maybe.
Yeah, I think there was a lot you could do with that, but again, they wanted to speed things up and throw in a bunch of references that little kids don't know and adults barely know to forward propel this cinematic universe.
Yeah, like
and
how relevant is Simon Cowell now? That's what I don't understand.
I know. As soon as that happened, I was like, "Oh no, that is not a direction I wanted to go down."
Also, because I'm pretty sure he's in like Shrek 3 or Shrek 4 or Shrek 7 or I don't know. Christmas Shrek.
Shrek 15,
Yeah.
the Shrekening.
Yeah, he's in a Shrek movie, and then he's also, how many like cinematic universes is Simon Cowell going to appear in, like animated universes?
Not only that, but we get a Shallow reference. Like they start singing the Shallow song from Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, and I'm just like, what am I watching?
Yeah, now that was very intentional on Warner Brothers' part. Again, this is Warner synergy. Maybe not at its best.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Star is Born, a huge important movie for Warner Brothers. It may have even been their biggest film of 2018. Is that when it was?
It was. Yeah. I think it was their biggest film of 2018.
Yeah, they have HBO Max billboards right now where they say we're making it, and then it shows like A Star Is Born meets Faking It, and then it's the HBO show Barry, and those crack me up. They're just like so random. The ones they pick, I think it's so funny. Yeah.
Right. I keep waiting to see the Looney Tunes one of that.
Yeah.
But I haven't come across it.
Yeah,
I have seen the three Ricks, or. It's Rick from Casablanca, Rick from Rick and Morty, and then Reek, I guess, from Walking Dead.
Wow, that's really clever. That's like crazy. I like the classic one. I feel like is where Bada meets Bing meets Bang, and it's Bada is Sopranos, Bing is Chandler Bing from Friends, and Bang is Big Bang Theory.
Wow,
it's like. This is the three most random things you can possibly put together.
So just to correct myself, I guess that third one is Reek from Game of Thrones.
Oh, right.
I didn't watch Game of Thrones, so I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were watching Scoob, did you hear certain music or sound cues that gave you a hint that we were in a Hanna-Barbera movie? This happened to me a lot. So
yes.
I was listening for certain things that reminded me of like the Flintstones and Jetsons, and then they occurred, and some of them are very blatant. Like there's at the caveman Thor Ragnarok scene.
Yeah.
Basically, there's a guy who blows on a bird to make sound or something like that, and it was the exact same squawk as whenever Fred Flintstone gets off of work, and I was just like,
"Oh wow,
yeah,
that's really cool." I know when Scoob and Shaggy moved around and like will go to hide behind things, it was like that like sound effect, which is perfect.
Yeah, lots of those. And I also feel like Shaggy and Scooby going bowling is a Flintstones reference because they tie it in very well with the callback to it at the end. But I feel like we've never seen those characters bowl before, but there's another Hanna-Barbera collection of cartoons that is all about bowling. So I feel like that's kind of tying those two together in a way. Okay,
you're probably right. I wasn't sure if it was like like relating Shaggy to the Big Lebowski or something. I don't know.
Oh, I don't necessarily think you're wrong there. I just can't see them putting that in a kids movie just for the kids, you know.
That's true. Although I will double down on it. They both live in Venice, California, right? Interesting.
They're both in California. I don't think he lives in Venice.
Oh, the dude? Yeah, I think the apartment is in Venice. It was up for sale a couple of years ago, and
oh wow, I'm
pretty sure. Yeah, it's in Venice somewhere.
Interesting. Who owns the Big Lebowski? Is that Warner Brothers too?
No. Oh, it's Universal, so we shouldn't be talking about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it's a Focus Features film, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I used to go to Lebowski fests a lot when I was like a long time. Like when they had them, they were like super prevalent.
Yeah, like I remember they were really popular.
2006, like they were really big. Yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome. So we had some really cool robot designs with these alien creatures that are owned by Dick Dastardly, who I really like from Wacky Races. And whenever he was talking about Muttley dying or having died, I was just I was really confused. I was like, they killed off one of the most prominent characters of Wacky Races before this movie
Yeah.
even began. And then over the course of the movie, you get that backstory and you realize he's not dead. But I was really shocked by everything that they did here. And it was interesting.
Yeah, I think that Dick Dastardly and Muttley paralleling with like Shaggy and Scooby, paralleling with Alexander the Great and Peritas. Actually, honestly, like I really liked all of that stuff. I thought that was really interesting in a way. Like
I also found it compelling. I would agree.
yeah, I like for like they could do anything in the story, right? And they could have stuck with a very simple Scooby-Doo story, but instead they were like, no, we're gonna try to like give Scooby some backstory in his past a little bit, and it makes me wonder if like Alexander the Great's dog talked.
Oh, yeah, maybe so. Who knew we were going to learn about Greek mythology in this?
Right? Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
I know my
good.
nephew watched this movie, and he really liked the monster at the end, the 3-headed dog at the end, and how they defeated him. So,
Oh, nice. Yeah, Cerberus, right?
Cerberus, and his favorite character was Scooby. So that's working on some level for this shared universe. And going forward, we can obviously see more Scooby interacting with other franchises.
That's true.
See.
That's very
We'll see
true.
what happens.
Yeah.
What were your favorite parts? I wanted to highlight some of the better parts of the film.
Yeah. Well, as we're saying, so like Dick Dastardly, like his big plan is he wants to get Alexander the Great's gold, which is hidden. It's hidden in behind the gates of hell, and he has to find the 3 heads of the dog that like guards hell, which is Cerberus. He has to find like the 3 skulls, and like I just like that idea. And then so he finally does, and just to expand on what we were saying before with Alexander the Great, it's like Alexander the Great and Scooby is actually the last descendant of Peritas, Alexander's dog, and so like he's with the 3 skulls, and with Scoob he's able to like open the portal to get all the gold. So I just thought that was like a neat storyline overall. I like that Dick Dastardly also he like replaces one of the robot's heads with a dustbuster. And that becomes like a main like one of like the dustbuster robot like helps them at one point like escape from Dick Dastardly prison. I really like that a lot. That was cute.
Me too. When the dustbuster went on, I thought that the robot had a very unique design to him, and he stood out more. And that's obviously intentional, but he became something more than just a robot figure. Like he actually had a personality when that came out.
Yeah.
You know, when that went on.
Yeah.
And I really like what they did with that character. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I wish he had a name. They should have gave him a name.
I think they did actually. At the very end, I think they call him like it's like something like Dusty or I think it's like Dustbuster. There's something that they call him at the very end. I forget though, because he becomes like a good guy by the end. That one robot.
Yeah. Oh, now that I think about it, he kind of looks like a Jetsons character, a little bit like Rosie.
Oh, okay.
A little bit.
Yeah.
In the face, minus the dustbuster part.
Yeah.
Because of the big eyes. I don't know. Maybe I'm stretching that a bit. I just really want a Jetsons movie now.
Yeah, and I think we'll get one sooner rather than later. I mean, the Jetsons Meet the Flintstones came out when I was a kid, and I thought that, again, a crossover movie. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. Like, these characters know each other.
We've had crossover movies our entire lives.
Yeah, we're
spoiled when it comes to crossovers.
We've been very lucky, that's for sure. Yeah, starting my life off with Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a bad idea. Because I expect everything on that level.
Exactly, but everything
go
done with love and care, and I think there was a lot of prospect and opportunity with this project. I just don't know if the execution came out the way that they wanted it to. Just because they're juggling a whole lot of stuff. And we haven't even gotten to the superhero aspect of it with
Blue Falcon.
The Blue Falcon. Which I don't even know that as a character. I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, well, that's the other dog and like human, like there's like a bunch of them. So there's the Blue Falcon and then Dynamite, which I found out that Dynamite, like the show was Dynamite, the Dog Wonder or something like and that was a show I believe before Scooby Doo, and then in the third iteration of Scooby Doo called the Scooby Doo show. There was also the Scooby-Doo Dynamite Hour. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and so in that time, from what I understand, is that Blue Falcon and Scooby did cross over back then. And it makes sense if you think like generationally, where the people writing like Scoob nowadays would have grown up with like Scooby probably in the 70s as their like, you know, their childhood cartoon would have been like Scooby probably hanging out with the Blue Falcon and Dynamite, which I guess they make like the Blue Falcon. He's like not the big deal. It's actually Dynamite, which I kind of find really funny. Like it's like he's boring. He's like the son of a superhero. Like he's whatever. Like Dynamite is the actual superhero here. He's the Dog Wonder. I think that's what they were going for there.
I think they nailed that because I related to Dynamite more than Blue Falcon here.
Yeah, and Ken Jeong did a really good job playing Dynamite.
Yes, he did.
So and good. I had no idea that was Mark Wahlberg. I don't know why you would get Mark Wahlberg if he's not doing his Mark Wahlberg impression, but it's fine. He was fine. It was a very default voice. I didn't know it was him. I had to look it up.
Same. This entire cast I had to look up. I was just confused the entire time. I was like, who's voicing these characters? And why do they sound oddly off? But Mark Wahlberg, for sure, I feel like he did this for his kids. I feel like he wanted to be a part of something greater, like Iron Man or a la the MCU. And he wanted to do something that appealed to his kids.
You're probably right.
So it wasn't a distracting accent. It was just a default accent, like you said. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, he got rid of his Boston accent, and it was just very, like, what do they call it? It's like Manhattan, like, newscaster. It was very, like, as simple as possible.
Agreed. And I wish that... I guess I wish I got more out of that character than I did. I just felt like he was pretty generic as a character.
Yeah, I thought they were going to develop something more with him. I mean, the most interesting thing about him, I guess, is that, like, and I'm just pulling at this, like, he's a descendant of a superhero, and he fights Captain Caveman, who's the first superhero. So it's almost like the very first superhero is fighting, like, what could possibly be like the newest possible superhero, because like he's the son of one. He's like as new as possible. I don't know. Maybe like I'm really pulling there though, trying to find these like interesting like things.
Right. No, that is it was an interesting scene, but he was not. I don't know. He didn't have a big part in it, if you will, because he was overshadowed by what's going on with Shaggy and Scooby and the gang. And I was more invested in that plot line. But now that you're saying it, that whole aspect of legacy and lineage is very interesting. And I wonder how that's going to play if they go back in time and delve into the Flintstones and they have his father in that, or they have a relative in that. And maybe that's somehow related to the Great Gazoo, who's my favorite Flintstones character.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm
that'd be cool. Yeah,
but I could see how that would work, and they played the Great Gazoo in the show as this imaginary creature, but they could actually play it as an alien and related to something from the future sent back in time or something like that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I really like in this movie. I mean, they could simply say like the Flintstones are in that like because they go to a place that is like prehistoric in this movie.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where they find
With Captain Caveman.
Yeah, that's where they find the final skull, and it's also it's Messick Mountain. That's where they find it, and that's named after Don Messick, who was the original voice of Scooby until his death in '97.
When I found that out, I had to tip my hat to Warner Brothers on that one, or the Warner Brother Animation Group.
Yeah,
because that was just a really nice touch.
Yeah, I love when they do stuff like that, and yeah, very classy on their end for sure.
Yeah.
And I also when they go into that prehistoric area, like they fly in, and as they fly in, they crash into like 5 pterodactyls. I thought that was really funny, actually. It's just like so silly to me, but just like.
Yeah, there were some sound effects and some actions in here that were very satisfying. I also thought back to when the whole carnival scene is happening, which by the way is one of my favorite set pieces, when Scoob goes into that haunted I guess it's haunted, but the carnival in the House of Mirrors and everything, and he's being chased by Dick Dastardly, and we get that crazy Dick scene.
Yeah.
But I really liked when Dick Dastardly falls from that height of the Ferris wheel that's been taken off the tracks, and that plummet into the ground, and that just like at the end. It was so satisfying. I don't know, did you feel that too?
I do, definitely. Yeah, it's yeah, and like because that they then go into that arcade, like right in that moment, and that has so many references. Like I think they had
Hong Kong Phooey, as we mentioned before.
Yeah, Space Stars. They have the Laugh Olympians instead of the Laugh Olympics, which was with their like multiverse colliding thing. Obviously, it was the Laugh Olympics back in the day, and they produced that in like 77, 78, and so that was when like that third generation of Scooby-Doo with the Blue Falcon was happening. So. I guess that like that's why they're really pulling from this like very specific era. I feel like of Scooby-Doo's history, which I just think is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right before that, I think it was Dick. He says, "Stop right there, you filthy animal, and your dog too." And I was thinking that was a possible reference to the Wizard of Oz, obviously something Warner Brothers owns now after like MGM had to file for bankruptcy. But then
more that synergy.
Yeah, and I think that filthy animal part of that is from the movie they're watching in Home Alone, Angels with Filthy Souls, but that's a Fox movie. But recently, that same exact clip is in Detective Pikachu for some reason. I don't know why, but it's there.
That's true. It is. It's a really weird reference for them to pull, but I love Home Alone, so anytime they reference Home Alone, I love it.
Oh yeah, both Home Alone,
including Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, Home Alone and Detective Pikachu, both great movies.
I also wanted to mention Kiersey Clemons does the voice of Dee Dee Skies, who is the pilot of the Blue Falcon, and she is just amazing. And I hope we get more of her in this series.
Yeah,
she definitely has an interesting character look and design, as well as some really fun character motivations that can really be exploited for future stories.
Yeah, and she's from the Teen Angels, like Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, which I think was later 70s Hanna-Barbera. And so they utilized her. The two other Teen Angels were Taffy and Brenda. Obviously, they were a take on Charlie's Angels. But it was Captain Caveman, the first superhero, and these 3 angels. So it's cool that they pulled Dee Dee out of that and like let her be her own character. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Also, Kiersey Clemons is supposed to be in the Flash movie, and I believe she was in the Justice League movie.
Oh, is she gonna play
2017? So
Iris West?
Yes, Iris West.
That would be perfect. I love that.
Yeah. So that's all amazing. More of that synergy, as we were talking about.
That's it. I hope they get Timothée Chalamet because he's going to be in their Dune movie. I hope they get him. I would like him to be Batman Beyond personally, but I mean, we'll see what happens.
Oh.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Yeah, he'd make a good Terry.
Yeah, Terry McGinnis,
agree.
and then obviously get back like Michael Keaton, or
Michael
even like
Keaton.
I'd want like I'd be fine with George Clooney even coming back, because I think he could play a really cool older Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, I agree. Either of them, or Kevin Conroy,
Yeah, Kevin
whichever one you want to do.
would be great. Val Kilmer, you get any of these guys.
Also, the character design of the Blue Falcon. Did you think that was like a Batman push, like to have someone who looks like Batman alongside Scooby-Doo?
Oh, probably, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Blue Falcon isn't introduced into like the DC universe in like the next 5 to 10 years.
Via comics, TV, or movies? Which one do you think?
Comics, yeah. Or yeah, and I also want Freakazoid to be introduced in the DC universe. Like, why not?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you own it. Just throw him in there one day. Like,
I'm surprised he hasn't already been thrown in there.
yeah, I think someone made their own Freakazoid in like a fighting game. I remember once that looked like it could be like, I don't know if there's in Injustice or in DC versus Mortal Kombat, if you can create your own character. I think it's in one of those, but I could be mistaken.
Okay. I think I remember what you're talking about, but it's been way too long.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, in this movie, Scoob says he never saw Paris before getting abducted, and out of all I would think all of the episodes of their TV shows and their movies, like he's never been to Paris. It just is really surprising to me. Like, he's been to the WWE city twice. There's 2 WWE movies, and it's like all of Rhode Island is just WWE City for some reason. Or no, not Rhode Island. Sorry, Connecticut. I think that's where they actually are. But like it's like an entire city of WWE. He's been there, but not Paris.
Not Paris. I wonder if that's another reference that if we dive deep, we'll find that he ran into a specific creature in Paris that's related to the plot of this movie somehow.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I would not put it past them. They pulled from so many obscure things. I had no idea who Captain Caveman was until this movie. And I remember the character design, but I don't remember anything about him.
And
come
on,
the fact that
like
Tracy Morgan is voicing him is great.
Yeah. So good. We both said Tracy Morgan at the same time. Hopefully it picked up properly. Yeah, that was so
sure
great. I wanted more Captain Caveman. I really thought, because when they announced this movie, and when they announced the voice cast, and Tracy Morgan, I think, was part of the first round that they announced. Like, they announced the 4 main people and then Tracy Morgan. So I thought he was going to have a bigger role in this movie. But we got what we got. I'm not complaining. I like what we got. So he'll
have a bigger role in the Captain Caveman movie, which is going to be coming out in 2024, I'm sure.
Yeah, with all of the characters they reveal at the very end of the movie, which is crazy.
Right. Oh my gosh. It was just so much. You had the Quest family, you had who else did you have? I'm blanking.
At the very end, there's Magilla Gorilla, Jabberjaw, and Adam Ant, you see. And it says Falcon forces new recruits, something like that.
Yeah, again, I feel like they're putting the cart ahead of the horse with this a little bit.
Yeah, a little dark universe-y.
Those usually do really well, so maybe this is the type of area to do that with.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just really surprised that we haven't heard about future production of more animated films within this series at this point.
Yeah.
Because if they wanted to do something along the lines of Iron Man, what a lot of people forget is that The Incredible Hulk came out the same year as Iron Man. And while those two don't have events that connect them directly, there is connection there that people could find. And, Tony Stark obviously shows up at the end of that movie. But it would be interesting to have another one of these WAG films that is in the same universe that people can dive deep into and pull out those references and make a bigger deal out of it.
It's curious too how we do have Tom and Jerry coming up, which is a slightly different take. It's a Hanna-Barbera movie, but it's like half live action, half, I think, is it hand drawn or is it CG? I forget.
It's a little bit of both. and that comes out in December.
Okay.
And you're correct.
So
It's live action animation.
I would have hoped that if this movie Scoob was released in theaters, we would have gotten like a proper trailer of Tom and Jerry before it. But because we all had to buy it for $25, we didn't get a trailer beforehand. But like it would have been neat if they still had that trailer before it or something, like just to attach.
I agree. And it's really ironic that you brought that up because I remember anticipating the release of Scoob for that trailer specifically. We were supposed to get an in-theaters trailer for Tom and Jerry with the release of Scoob.
So disappointing.
It is. And I wonder why they didn't release that online yet.
Yeah.
And also, is that going to be related to this universe?
Yeah, probably not. I could see, honestly, I think it takes place in New York, that movie, and they're making like that Sesame Street movie where Big Bird gets lost in New York and he has to like find his way back to the secret like entrance to Sesame Street.
Right.
Like I could see those two crossing over, but just because they're the same city, that's all. And the same company.
Maybe they'll all cross over. Who knows at this point?
Honestly, I feel like Space Jam: The New Legacy, like everything's gonna cross over. That's my guess, but I have no idea.
So I had two thoughts with the voice cast in here. One is that it could be a sign of Warner Brothers not having a lot of faith in the property to sell itself, and they need talent. And that makes me worried for the voice cast of Space Jam 2. But also, it makes me wonder if we're going to see the live action versions of these Scooby-Doo characters in a future movie.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting. I think because Will Forte has done voice work before. He plays Abraham Lincoln or Abe in Clone High for that show for MTV. So he was the lead in that. Great show.
Yeah, by Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Yeah, they all get frozen at the end, and the show doesn't get picked up, which I think is kind of funny. Like, so he does have like history of doing voiceover work. I don't know. I really don't know what they're gonna do with that. It was a very weird decision to change him over. Obviously, I think it was to try to make more money at the box office, but also I think it was just to give it something fresh. Like, oh look, we're rebooting, so we're just recasting as well. And then we'll have one person that is the legacy voice. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Well, I think for this, it worked good enough.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see how they play it going forward. But if Trolls 2 is any indication, then this is going to do really well on VOD and with kids and families. And then we'll see a big success with animated films like this going to VOD and also building a franchise out of it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see if this made more or less than Trolls 2 did, because I think that made $100 million, and that was only $20 to rent. This was $25 to own or $20 to rent. So it'd be interesting to see if that like extra $5 gives them a little more cash. We'll see.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that and see.
Yeah.
But overall, I think this is a decent effort. It's messy, but it's fun at times, and the characters are colorful enough, and you get enough of the Scooby-Doo element for it to earn its name, and I'm interested to see where they go from here.
Yeah, I had one more Warner synergistic entity in the film, and that's when Shaggy actually mentions Middle Earth, and then Blue Falcon says copyright infringement, which is funny because like it's not copyright infringement. They can mention all like the Lord of the Rings stuff they want, since obviously Lord of the Rings is a New Line Warner Brothers property.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, it's like
I
a
was
really
like, why
fun.
is he saying that?
Yeah, he should have just said like synergy or something like that instead. But maybe less people would have gotten that joke. I don't know. But yeah, overall, I think that I think kids will really enjoy this movie. I do think there's some good jokes in it. There's some really bad jokes. It starts off with like a Grand Theft Gyro or Grand Theft Gyro joke, which I think is just okay. Like, that's fine. I'm sure kids like that joke. There was a couple more throughout, which were kind of silly. But overall, I do think kids will like this. I'm glad that they're getting exposed. Like, I'm glad that a generation who grew up on like Scooby and Blue Falcon hanging out and Dynamite and Captain Caveman, I guess, and Dick Dastardly, with like all of these characters, like they all, yeah, and Muttley, they all hung out in the Laugh Olympics, and I even believe, like, I'm pretty sure Blue Falcon and Dynamite were on Scooby Doo's team, like in the Laugh Olympics, so they were like competing with each other as well, not against each other. So
interesting.
It's cool to see like that generation all grown up now and saying, this is what we love about this, so we're gonna do that and give that to our kids or our kids' kids. So I think that's like a really cool aspect of this film. It is messy. It is very sloppy. There's some stuff like do you really need to have like Dick Dastardly yelling out his name over and over again as a joke for kids? Like, yeah. Like I work with kids, and like there's some of them, like I won't show them this movie because of that moment, unfortunately.
There's also that scene where they get pulled over by the female officer, and it was just really awkward. I was like, what is this moment for?
Yeah, that blew up with the internet too.
Yes,
because people were like, look at this character, like everyone's gonna fall in love with this character, and then like obviously there's a reveal in the movie, we won't give it away, but yeah, it's very silly. It's
all very silly. I think this shows promise in a potential universe. I think they did too much. They tried to push too much into it. And I guess I want to separate this conversation from a spoiler conversation regarding the ending. And I'm going to put that divide here. So everything going forward is a super spoiler for the end of this movie. I would agree. Like nothing that we had said before really spoils the movie. There's a moment at the end where they are going to sacrifice Shaggy, and I thought, this is interesting. They're going to put Shaggy in the underworld and have the rest of the Scooby gang and like Fred, Daphne, and Velma go on, do mysteries without Shaggy, and then in another movie pick Shaggy up, and that storyline continues, and you have a divergent of storylines going. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, I like that idea better than a statue randomly appearing out of the ground, like of Alexander the Great and Peritas, the dog, and then like him coming out of that. I didn't understand that. I still don't, but like it's what happened. I mean, maybe I missed something. But,
no, I feel like that feels like studio notes to me. That what I said feels like something that they might have came up with or something along those lines, but it was too dark for kids to handle, and so they had to rewrite that ending.
Yeah, your ending is like the Empire Strikes Back ending, where it's like Luke is like, I'm gonna leave my training now, like early, and Yoda's like, wait, don't do that yet. He's like, no, don't worry, I'm gonna go save my friends. And then his dad chops off his hand, and then he falls like into a vat of nothing, and like his best friend gets frozen in carbonite and steals his like girlfriend, who turns out to be a sister later. Besides the point. But like, yeah, like that movie ends on such a dark note, and like you have to get a sequel, you know. And obviously, like, there's other movies that do that now. Infinity War did that, I think, pretty well. Although I think Endgame is a better film than Infinity War. Anyway, that doesn't matter. That's Disney.
Back to Warner Brothers.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think maybe they were trying to pull. They're trying to like set up a sequel and maybe have it a little darker ending, like you're saying. That does make a lot of sense. Give it the old Empire Strikes Back ending, and then they decided that's a little dark, a little too dark for us.
Right. But the fact that a creative team came up with something like that makes me think that maybe not for the first movie, but for the second movie, they might go that dark. They might do something that is that interesting and tasty as far as a plot goes, you know, like story elements that you can actually latch your teeth onto and, you know, dive deep into. So I really hope that there is more depth to these related films, and maybe the team behind it actually has like a reverence for these characters that can translate into that that depth.
Definitely. Yeah, and I guess like the biggest depth in this movie is Shaggy and Scooby meet at the beginning. Shaggy names Scooby after Scooby Snacks, which I always thought that Scooby Snacks were named after Scooby, but it's fine.
Same. Yeah.
It's like the Han Solo thing where it's like he doesn't like the only complaint I have about the like Han Solo, like his last name isn't Solo, is like I feel like he should have said I'm Solo, and then the person like misunderstand him. Like the other guy gave him his name. Like he should have given himself that name. Anyway, again, I always talk about Star Wars. I can always make it about Star Wars. So sorry.
That's great.
It's a problem I have.
Not a bad problem.
Yeah. So Shaggy and Scooby, like they don't have any friends. That's like the whole point of the beginning of the movie. And then like because of Scooby, Shaggy then has all of these friends, and then we learn that Shaggy is in love with Blue Falcon as a kid, and then like when the Blue Falcon picks them up, they give like Scooby like the superhero outfit, and Shaggy doesn't get one, and then the collar is taken off that like Shaggy gave Scooby. So that's like the emotional through line of this movie is Shaggy like not having friends, having friends, and feeling like he's alone again because Scooby's being taken away from him, and then like they're literally being separated at the end with the gate, and then like we said, they get the happy ending and they get bonded again. So
yeah, the heart of this movie is really strong, and it follows that thing around. I'm blanking on the name of it. The collar. The heart of this movie is really with the collar around Scooby's neck, and I'm really glad how they pulled that off, and that pulled us all the way through. I really felt the emotion around that collar the entire time, so I think they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, I agree.
And now a quick word from our sponsors. Acme, it's where you buy your anvils.
Hello. I'm looking for some magical paint. Do you have any here at Acme?
We have tons of magical paint. We have two-tone paint. I think the paint is somewhat sentient, so be careful on where you paint it, because it will possibly come to life on you.
Oh, come to life. Okay, I'm fine with coming to life. I'm just worried if it is... It's actually a candle store that I'm painting, and I just want to make sure, is it flammable? Is it inflammable? Is it non-flammable? I'm also very confused on those terms, too. I don't know what means what.
Sure, well, let me help you clarify. Inflammable means it will definitely catch on fire. Flammable means it will definitely catch on fire. And non-flammable means no fire. So which one are you looking for?
I'm looking for either non-flammable or unflammable. Not flammable.
Well, we have unfathomably flammable. And that one is 80% sure not to catch on fire. Do you want to try
but
that
it has the un in it, so it's but then fathomably, but then flammable. So it is unflammable. It just has other words in it too. I think that sounds great, actually. Now you said it's sentient. Now, does that mean that I could enter it, or that mean that I can't enter it?
So that means that you can enter it, but you can't come back from there. But also, it means that inanimate objects can enter it and come back from there if they are sentient as well. But they have to be sentient. You have to make sure that they are sentient before you throw them inside.
Okay, well, I hate my job, so this sounds like the perfect magical paint. Thank you.
Great. Let me just ring you up for that. Unflammable, flammable, unfathomable,
Jim, what are you doing? If you can't say the name of our product, sorry, I'm going to have to let you go.
Unfathomable. Crap. In Rick and Morty this week, we had a really fun reference. The specific episode is called the Vat of Acid episode, and it points out that before negging was called negging, it was simply known as reverse psychology, and it wasn't invented by incels, it was invented by Bugs Bunny, which is really funny and a really weird random reference that I really loved. And it's also that synergy we keep talking about, because Rick and Morty is Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network. And I really love how Bugs Bunny just keeps coming up around now. We're approaching his 80th birthday in July, and
Oh, wow.
I feel like the more exposure he gets, the more reverence and more love he's going to get surrounding him. But as well as the rest of Looney Tunes. And I just love whenever Warner Brothers decides to put him in the script.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and he has been there to a degree. Like, we had like Lunatics Unleashed like back at like a couple decades ago now, and we just had like the Looney Tunes show, and then what was the new one called? Was it just called New Looney Tunes or something like that? But
Yes, it was Wabbit, and then it transitioned into the new Looney
that's
Tunes.
it. But they were never like those shows for some reason weren't able to penetrate like the zeitgeist. Like I feel like they've been having success with as of recent. I feel like in this last
Right.
year, there's really been a breakout of kids being more aware of who the Looney Tunes were for the past, like you said, 80 years.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really great to see them coming full form into the vignette style, which we're getting now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in World of Mayhem news, we had some official announcements drop. As part of the Roadmap of Mayhem, we can now find a new way of leveling up your characters with the multi-XP level up, adding in an option for multiple vats of lunicity to be added to your character to give them that level boost you need to get over a battle threshold. This comes in the form of a slider, and instead of clicking the same button endlessly for however many times you want to update your character, you can now just do it in one fell swoop, and that makes everything easier on you as a player. And you were saying that you've tried downloading the game, but you didn't have success with that.
Yeah.
But I will say that if you are a fan of the game and you've had any headaches or anything like that, Scopely is very good about responding to criticism or issues that they've had with gameplay. And so if you want to reach out to them, I'm sure you can find the Scopely website to be very helpful. And hopefully with these new updates, it makes playing all the more easier for new players as well as veterans. So that's something to look forward to, for sure.
Just spam tweet them until they give you the World of Mayhem cut. I'm just joking.
Yes, we want more Superman.
Yeah, and so
Less mustache.
put Superman in my Looney Tunes World of Mayhem game. Make it happen, Warner Brothers and Scopely. Put Neo from The Matrix in my World of Mayhem game, please. I'm asking very nicely. People are so.
I mean, that would add to the mayhem.
Yeah, people are so mean on the internet. I'm being nice. I would love that. That'd be the coolest thing ever, and like I'd be in awe.
I too would be in awe. They have a really great design team over there, so any new characters that come out, they're always really on point and detailed, and I'm baffled.
That's really
at
cool.
The amount of talent that they have over there. The game is available on Google Play. You can download it on Google Play or anywhere you can download apps.
Oh yeah, and you can also download Looney Tunes Paint on a Windows computer or Looney Tunes Art Games. I just typed that in, and that's what popped up. So that's pretty neat. There's a couple other things. You can also download Back in Action and the Looney Bugs Bunny movie, which I forget if that's the second or third or fourth or fifth of those compilation films they made back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I think that's the second one.
Nah, I think you're right.
I ate those up as a kid. Like I really enjoyed all of the compilation movies.
So great.
Yeah. All right, Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. If you have any websites or any links that you want to plug, go ahead and plug away.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. Again, you can find me on my Warner Brothers podcast. It's about the greater Warner fandom, a term I made up, and that's the AT&WB podcast. You can find that on fulldinosaur.com or fulldino.com if you're too lazy to write out sore, I guess. and I was also and so we have Matrix episodes coming up. So actually just watched the first Matrix movie, so it'll be a commentary track, and it'll also be like a deep dive into like times where other Warner Brothers properties have mentioned the Matrix are in there. We kind of studied like the time it came out and how important it was, and how how the references to the movie are just everywhere, and also like what the movie is like. It has a lot of philosophy behind it, so we kind of delve into like what does the Nebuchadnezzar mean, and things like that. And
excellent.
And you can also find me. I also guested on another podcast recently, and has nothing to do with Warner Brothers. It actually has to do with Nintendo and Donkey Kong and the greater Donkey Kong universe. I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you remember the game Diddy Kong Racing,
yes, love that game.
Awesome. It's one of the best. But if you remember Banjo, from Banjo-Kazooie, Conker from Conker's Bad Fur Day, and even Tip Top, who that was later in Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, and he's in Grunty's Revenge, which was for the Game Boy Advance. You actually find out the room that he conceived his children in that game, because it takes place in the past.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm deep diving in Donkey Kong, deep mythology. But I guested on that show when we talk about the Mario Golf for Game Boy Color, which came out in '99. So yeah, it's a completely different fandom. But that was a lot of fun. Kyle was nice enough to have me on, and that's the Conversation is the podcast. It's dkvine.com.
That's a great name.
Yeah. So yeah, KONG Versation. It's a very clever pun.
Nice.
Yeah.
That sounds excellent. And listeners, if you want to follow him, you can do so on Twitter as well as Instagram, right? You have an Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, the Instagram is just my cats. It's at Zeitchrist. If you want to see pictures of Mr. Artemis BB Cat and Lana Leopard. But yeah, also at Zeitchrist on Twitter, which is the ATNWB podcast official Twitter account. It's at Zeitchrist, which is, I guess, ZEIT, and then Christ, CHRIST.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to that Matrix conversation, just because I love that movie, and anytime somebody talks about the philosophy of it, I'm always there.
So much fun. It was so much fun to deep dive on it. And, we have Matrix Reloaded, Enter the Matrix, Animatrix, and Matrix Revolutions all coming up. And I think we figured out the name of the new movie. It has to be this, which is for the Matrix 4. I'm ready. The Matrix Rebooted. It has to be an R.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. Who knows?
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I really hope I'm right in that, but we'll see. We'll see what the future entails.
We shall see indeed. And thank you again for being on. Thank you for giving us all of this insight into Warner Brothers and the fandom that now exists. And hopefully with our podcast, more people will see that, and it will continue to grow. And yeah, with that being said, you can find us at This Means Pod on Twitter and This Means Podcast on all social media, as well as podbean.com/This Means Podcast. And that's not all, folks. Have a good day.